Billy Lucci, TexAgs.com. Billy, welcome back to T-Town. I hope you're doing well, man.
I'm doing good. Just staying out of this rain today over here.
Well, yeah, we just had a couple calls from out there, and that's what everybody else is saying. Please send it this way. We are dry. I mean, I feel like we're turning in the desert around here in Tuscaloosa.
I feel you. We would have had it not been for the 25 inches or so we got over here in College Station during the hurricane. But other than that, yeah, it hasn't been a real rainy couple of months to today. So, but the good news is this weekend's weather forecast was beautiful. College Station, maybe a little warm, but it's a night game, so it shouldn't be bad at all.
Billy, give me the state of the Texas A&M program right now going into the month of October.
Give you the what?
The state, the state of the program. Where's Texas A&M right now? What's the feeling there in College Station? What's the state of the program?
I think you're starting to see the beginnings of some optimism outside of the program. In other words, I mean the fan base and maybe some of the decision makers, but I think everybody realizes they haven't really accomplished anything yet, beating Arkansas and South Carolina, but they set up a big game with Alabama at home. It'll be a litmus test, not of you're not going to, if your season's not going to be ruined if you don't beat Alabama. Probably won't be ruined if you're not competitive with Alabama. But if you are, for this team has such a difference, in my opinion, bigger than any team in the SEC right now. For 2017, with how good they could be, we're almost, this weekend will be at the midpoint of the season. To how good they could be from the midpoint of the season to the end, they've got more room for growth than any team in the league, in my opinion. And that has to do with the true freshman quarterback that just keeps getting better and better. That has to do with a lot of youth at wide receiver around Christian Kirk. That has to do with an O-line that took a while to get settled. It has to do with a ton of young players on defense, and really some of the young guys that are just starting to play that will only play more and more as the season goes on. I think this team ceiling, they're so far from reaching their ceiling. I mean, even for this season, the key will be, now if they go out and compete with Bama like they have the last 2 years. 2 years ago at Kyle, it was, I think, a 28-20 game with A&M with the ball on Bama's side of the field and midway through the third quarter. And then, I think the third of the 3 pick sixes happened, and that was about it. And last year in Tuscaloosa, what the Aggies led, 14-13, about 5 minutes into the third quarter, and then Alabama pulled away. But they've been competitive against Alabama these last couple of years since that 59-0. They beat them in year one in the SEC, and they were very competitive with them with Manziel and Mike Evans in year two. They have played as well against Alabama since that one disaster than probably just about anyone in the league, I guess, outside of Ole Miss, who just had their own disaster. Question is, Alabama is just destroying people lately, and can A&M continue that trend of being competitive? But if they do manage to do that again this season, I think it'll bode so well for this football team moving forward, because you look at that schedule and there's a lot of tough games. I don't know if there's one that you circle and go, they can't win. I mean, the toughest road trip to the Swamp, that's against a Florida team that I'm not buying into offensively yet just because they ran the ball on Vandy. And then there's the toughest team they play will be Auburn, but that's at Kyle Field and it's at home, and let's see where those two teams are, about a month from now. So if they're competitive this weekend, I think you'd want to revisit that state of the where things are right now in College Station discussion. But if they lose this game, I still think you come back and you revisit it after a 3-game stretch that is Florida, Mississippi State, and Auburn at home with a bye week between Florida and State.
Let me ask you, and if you look at this Texas A&M team, help me fill in the blank. They have success against Alabama by doing what?
That's a really tough one because here's the problem. They haven't played anybody even remotely similar to Alabama on either side of the ball. They haven't played a good team yet. I'd say they've played three okay teams at best. Arkansas, South Carolina, and UCLA. They're probably. I haven't gone through and just studied up on this yet, but I would say they're probably all three bowl teams. That's what they are. They haven't played a team that's even among the top 20 and top 25 in college football right now. So this is the ultimate step up in competition. I think they have success against Bama if they slow down the Alabama running game. This is an A&M team that surprisingly has fared very well against the run. They got hit with a couple of jet sweeps against Arkansas for about 60 yards on 2 runs. Otherwise, they did a really nice job. Did a solid job against Arkansas's ground game, and then they've held 3 of their 5 opponents under 100. And no one's saying they're going to do that against Bama, but it's for them to succeed. Slow down that running game. Don't let Jalen Hurts go big up top over their heads, and that's probably my number one concern in this one when Alabama has the ball, because they have not done a good job of keeping teams from doing that. Now, they've played some outstanding quarterbacks, and then I think the other thing is they're just going to have to stiffen in the red zone, hold them to a couple field goals. That's what they did early last year in Tuscaloosa. I think that's any team's key to success against Bama, because you're going to give up yards, they're going to move the ball. And the final thing, I think they've got to let Kellen Mond be Kellen Mond early in games. They've been very cautious. They don't have a quarterback behind him right now other than a banged-up Jake Hubenak. And by banged up, I mean, his throwing arm. Beyond that, they've got to let Kellen run zone read, because it's what opens things up for those running backs. It makes a suspect O-line a little better. It's what they did so well last year with Trevor Knight. Even against Bama, there were some yards on the ground there that maybe more so than most teams. I was at Alabama LSU. Keith Ford had a better day on the ground than Geiser Fournette did in that one. There were some things there because of the zone read and the running quarterback threat. And then Kellen's got to channel some type of Johnny Manziel in that when that pressure comes, don't just sit there and think you're going to sit in the pocket for 5 seconds, 6 seconds, because everybody tells you to, sit in the pocket and be a pocket passer. Take off and run. You can't run like Johnny, but the dude can really run the football when he takes off, as South Carolina and Arkansas learned the last 2 weeks. He's got to just play instinctive football at times instead of worrying about necessarily playing within the system on every snap.
Billy, let me ask you about that offensive line. How would you grade out this offensive line there in College Station?
It hadn't been good so far. It's been better these last 2 weeks, but I think they played the worst 2 defensive fronts they'll see in the SEC. Not that those are the worst 2 in the SEC, but the worst 2 they'll see in Arkansas and South Carolina. But they did a really good job against them. So that was a good start. It was perfect time in the schedule to meet those teams, and they're going up against the ultimate test now. I don't know that they're ready for that. Not having Deshaun Hand, people might think that hurts, and I'm sitting here looking at their depth chart, and I know how badly A&M tried to recruit, Josh Frazier and whoever else it was as the backup there. Isaiah Buzz. I mean, those are 2 guys A&M would have killed for, and those are the guys that they'll be facing without, Hand in there. So I don't think this is a test that I'm sure you would have liked to have come a little later in the season, because I think they'll be a lot better up front, let's say by the time a really good Auburn defensive front comes in here. These next 2 weeks probably have to be a little bit concerning when you've got Bama and Florida back-to-back.
I look at the sack numbers that Texas A&M has put up so far in the early month of September. They lead the conference in sacks. How have they been able to replace the sack monsters they had last year? How are they getting this number so high?
They've been doing it a lot of ways. They're getting it from linebackers more so than in the past. trends of getting it done at the same level. Now, Garrett was hurt most of last year, starting about late September. He was injured, but man, Landis Durham's been one of the biggest surprises I've seen covering A&M football. For him to have 5.5, 6 sacks already, 5 games in. His last 2 games, 2 SEC games, he's got 4 sacks. Before the season, I don't know how much I even discussed him because he was so far down on the depth chart. They had a highly touted junior college defensive end coming in, and Michael Clemens. He was behind Quaylen Cunningham. You just said Landis Durham was probably third on the depth chart at defensive end, and now he's second in the SEC in sacks, and Jarrett Johnson's got 3 on his own. Those guys have been good. A little bit I question them against the run, which is a big concern heading into this one. Are they going to be able to set that edge? But as far as getting pressure on the quarterback, that's one of the questions answered. I mean, I think the O-line is still a question mark. I think who steps up around Christian Kirk to take some of the pressure off of him is still a question mark, and that those two haven't really been answered. Osmond and Ratley have done a good job, but nothing, the receiving position, I wouldn't call it strength right now because teams are able to kind of take Christian Kirk out of it. But quarterback, Kellen Mond, and the pass rush are 2 questions that have been answered in the affirmative so far this season. It's been a couple. Both those things are really pleasant surprises, and I think the one thing that Alabama fans will probably notice if they watched, and I'm sure Nick Saban and his staff are noticing as they watch tape, the most improved position on that football team is linebacker, which has been a real problem for the Aggies probably ever since after their first year in the SEC when they had a bunch of seniors out there.
Billy, and let me just ask you point blank, because we're so far away from that program here in Tuscaloosa. Obviously, we cover it from a distance, but not the way that you do there at TexAgs.com. We're talking to Billy Lucci. Billy, let me ask you, is Kevin Sumlin safe?
It's a week-to-week thing. There's several programs in the SEC right now. Safe is what? I mean, I still think he needs to win a certain number of games this year to be safe, and obviously 4 is not that number. Even if you look and said, well, I don't know what that number is. The number that I keep looking at and kind of wondering about, I don't know that he's safe with 7. I know that he's safe with 9. That 8 and 4 is so interesting because it's what they've been stuck on. They've been 8 and 5 the last 3 years. You had the famous quote to Paul Feinbaum by Woodward of 8 wins isn't good enough, and the coach understands that, or whatever that quote was. But what about 8 in 2017 with a really young football team, a quarterback that just keeps, and whether he takes a step back this week against that Alabama defense or not, but a quarterback that keeps getting better and better, and he's done it against Tom Bradley, Paul Rhodes, and Will Muschamp in the first 5 games of his college career. What if you're 8 and 4 on this schedule and 5 and 3 in the SEC for the first time since 2012 that you pushed a winning record in the league? You're doing it with a top 10 recruiting class and a bunch of young players, and at a time where Ole Miss is a train wreck as a program. They're falling completely off. Arkansas, you could have Bama on the way out in another year or so. And then you've got LSU, maybe the most important there, when you look at them and say, hey, we keep this thing intact. The next 2 years on paper, when you look at the team they have coming back, should be really, really good. You have your quarterback. You go tee it up with Auburn and see who's Alabama's primary competition in the West for the next couple of years. Or do you go start it all over? And I think at 8 and 4, if you decide to start it all over, you better damn sure know of somebody that you're hiring that you feel incredibly good about getting 10 wins plus. Turn this into LSU under or Miles or turn it into Georgia under Rick. How many guys do you know can do that? How many guys could you hire that you say, that's a done deal? I don't know who they are. So unless you know you've got that guy, I think 8-4, you stand pat, and it might be your best play.
Billy, what's the buyout?
It's $10 million.
Okay.
I think within 60 days. That's not money A&M would be worried about. At all.
No. I mean, you guys just leave the oil on overnight, and you'd make that.
Last year at 15 with 2 more years of Chavis at 2, roughly, and 2 more years or 2 or 3 more years of Mazzoni at $1 million. Now you're looking at something closer to, $20 million to make a change. Now that's, 10, maybe 1 year of Chief and 2 years of Mazzoni. And then could cut that check and not blink. So it's not about the contract anymore. It'd be interesting if he has a 8-4 years to keep him, and then he's entering, next fall. At what point do you have to renegotiate that deal? And who has the leverage then? And it just gets really confusing at that point. But I think they'll be happy to worry about that when it gets here, because it would mean that they had a pretty decent season this year.